actually did it right this time. All right, people, and welcome to Willow. No, it's not Willow's Pillow Talk. It is Reels and Heels. I don't know what I'm doing apparently half the time, but this is the reason why Nicole and Brian usually handles everything. So I'm just the sexy co-host. But welcome to Reels and Heels. With me today, sorry, I'll let you introduce yourself, Will.
I'm Will, the writer and creator of the new comic Heel Turn. It is about a independent professional wrestler with a sadistic hobby. He is a serial killer. Think professional wrestling meets Dexter.
And you launched it on Kickstarter when?
Last Saturday, we just launched on the 26th.
Awesome. And okay, so because I'm Canadian, I'm looking at the website and it's in Canadian funds. So you have $833. So I apologize if that's not right in terms of American money. But so yeah, I'm going to share it to in the chat so that everybody can find you. And well, we're getting... Huh. Oh, yeah. StreamYard keeps telling me that they lost access to... Oh, okay. Apparently we're not alive on Facebook. Fine. Whatever. I'll fix that later. Anyway, so... Welcome, Carl. Good to see you. So, yeah. So... You're a huge fan of the wrestling fandom. Who was your favorite wrestler?
Kind of depends on what era or anything like that. I've always been partial to Sting and The Undertaker and Rey Mysterio.
Oh, okay. And you're obviously a fan of the Luchador wrestling. Has Rey Mysterio helped bring that to the mainstream, or what? Who was it? Do you know who brought luchadors into the mainstream before?
It's been a while. There's been several. You had Blue Demon Jr. WCW helped bring it to America quite well when they had the Cruiserweight division. Back in their prime, they helped give a lot of exposure to the luchador wrestling mainstream in America. You've got legends like Jushin Liger, who just retired recently, and he's wrestled the who's who of anybody all around the world. You've got, I've always been a fan of Rey Mysterio. He was one of the green rookies at the time of WCW. However, he's continued to keep the tradition. Now his son doesn't wrestle under a hood, but wrestles for WWE.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's neat.
I got to take a quick phone call. I'll be right back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right. So the show belongs to me now. Okay, so if anybody has any questions for yours truly, I'd be willing to answer them until my guest comes back. So yeah, welcome to Reels and Heels. I am Will Schuyler. I am a wrestling fan. I'm more so wrestling fan of indie wrestling as of late. But I've classic wrestling from like early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. My favorite wrestler, Bret the Hitman Hart. Have to rep the Canadians. All right. Welcome back.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So tell me a little bit more about Heel Turn. Where did you get the idea of a luchador serial killer?
Okay, so I've had a background, which we'll probably go into in a little while, in professional wrestling for quite a while. And then I've been a writer on and off since probably my teenage years, back with E-Federations, which was professional wrestling at that time, E-Feds, with MSN groups. Aging myself a little bit there. But that's where the idea for wrestling came and writing all the time. Well, I wrote a zombie novel book a couple years ago and had this idea of a serial killing professional wrestler that I was going to do as a novel. Well, I just put it on the back burner, and I've started discovering more and more comics than I did in the past. And so I was like, you know what? This idea would actually be a lot better if you had the visual aspects instead of just reading it and using your imagination. And so I was able to find an artist out of Brazil. I call him Rios because otherwise I butcher his name. And this is his first foray into sequential art. He is a marketing guy and he's done art, but this is his first time ever in sequential. And to me, he has taken my script and has just brought it to life. So the idea just basically came from being a fan of Dexter. So that's why I say professional wrestling meets Dexter, which is not coming back, to be honest with you. But as for the story itself, it follows the life of Ethan Johnson, who works as a call center rep during the day. Then during the weekend, he's an independent professional wrestler with a little bit of a sadistic side. He's a killer. If you want to see the origin story, you can go to hillturncomic.com. There's a download for the free Hill Turn number 0. It's a 5-page mini comic that will kind of give you his very first human kill and how he got started into it. So seeing that one, that's entirely black and white, but it's free to download on the website. Then you can come to the Kickstarter, check out the first book. It's a of 7. We have an ending already planned out. It's only going to be 7 books long. And as soon as we get done funding on number 1, we're right into number 2. This Kickstarter is 100% done already. Like, we're done 100% with this book. We're already working on number 2. We're just trying to get the funds to help bring it to print a lot faster.
Awesome. So what is it about luchadors that you are enthralled with?
Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Got a kid back there playing. Luchadors, I haven't really necessarily been involved with luchadors directly. Most of my background is just independence and some luchas here that I've met over the years, but most of mine, it's just a fandom of lucha style. Especially, this story doesn't necessarily follow lucha, so to speak. He is actually more of a ECW style, CZW style extreme wrestler. He uses the hood to help hide his true identity, which you get a lot of that. Mix the lucha style with a hooded wrestler because they want to keep that identity to themselves. For instance, you have it was Prince Puma at the time for Lucha Underground, which, yes, I understand that was a lucha show, and he does a lot of the flips and stuff, so I actually incorporated that into my comic. But he was kind of an inspiration for putting Ethan into a hood. If you look at the mask, I have the body style is kind of a Prince Puma. The mask is a variation of a couple of different famous ones, including Pinta and Phoenix. I've got some homages to them by looking at different pieces of that. So anybody that follows that style of wrestling will definitely catch on to little homages that I've done. But as it's the wrestling side, he is more of an extreme wrestler because that helps him relieve the built-up aggression that he gets, so he doesn't necessarily kill in the ring. Because he's a serial killer, so he can get away with this for years.
Yeah. I can't wait to read this comic myself. Like, one of my friends has made a luchador comic as well. Sorry, called Lucha Mystery. He's local comic book creator from Winnipeg, and he goes by Evan Quering. So I'll get you, I'll get you situated with him so that you can get his comic as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But he sent me. He keeps telling me that he's all, no, I'm not going to come on your show until I have something to promote, and he's on comic number 3 already. Like, dude.
You got enough to promote now.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I'm very much interested in the whole wrestling luchador aspect, and I know that there's like a religion around it all too. So that's fascinating.
Well, and that's one thing, like with this comic that I did, was back in even the 90s, so to speak. Before that, the kayfabe, you couldn't really see behind the scenes or nothing like that. With this comic, you definitely see, you don't a lot, but you definitely see the behind the scenes aspect. Like there's a couple of pages where he's in the locker room getting dressed, getting paid by the promoter. You see him out interacting. You see, like with independent shows, they have the intermission where you can actually go meet the fan favorites and get autographs and things like that. I actually incorporated all of that aspects into this comic. Now on like WWE, you don't see a lot of the main wrestlers coming out and being able to get autographs in the middle of the show. You can go get merch and food and stuff, but that's it. I've actually incorporated a lot of, if you went to an indie show, this is kind of the feel that you would get. Now, obviously, for the purposes of visualization and things, the crowds are a little bit bigger than your average indie show. But I don't like a whole lot of empty white space unless it's necessary for the story. So we kind of exaggerated certain points, but at the same time, if you're a fan of indie wrestling or if you've ever been to an indie show, you definitely get the feel of, hey, this would actually be a really cool independent show.
I have a couple of friends who do wrestling as well, indie wise, and how do you like? What's your feelings on going to these shows? Like, are you right smack in the middle of the stage? Like, do you stand up right close to the stage, or do you just kind of sit back and just watch the show from there?
It kind of depends on. I'm a fan of wrestling in general. Watch it. A lot of times, I've got friends or stuff like that that run a lot of promotions and independent shows, so I'll get like ringside or pretty close to ringside to see. But personally, I don't go behind the scenes a lot of the times unless I'm involved in the show. But I have been behind the scenes numerous times. Like I called myself the chauffeur for Beautiful Bobby Eaton a few years back when he was there. He wasn't wrestling anymore, but he was still doing a lot of appearances at wrestling shows. That's where I got to meet a lot of other legends I hadn't met before, just chauffeuring him around. At that time, then I went behind the scenes and obviously hung around with them. But if I go to an independent show, unless I'm directly involved, just out of respect for the boys, I try not to go backstage, but I will sit as close to the ring, or them will ask me to sit at their merchandise table so that they can sell merchandise while they're in the ring as well. So they don't just have to do it at intermission before and after shows, because some of these guys don't necessarily make a lot of money on the independent circuit. So the merchandise is where they start making money, their profit.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, okay. Have a good day, Carl. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping in. I would do like they go to the indie shows, and I actually was helping one of my friends film for our public access television channel. So that was a great experience, seeing like all these live shows come together that way. And I loved that experience and hope that I can continue with it once everything starts to open up and it goes back to normal a little bit. But when you did a lot of like the logos for independent wrestlers, right?
I've done logos, T-shirt designs, belt designs, websites for indie wrestlers, and now some of them are mainstream, but they were indies at the time. Yeah, I've had work all over the world, various different levels from mainstream to just independents.
That's awesome. And when you're talking to your clients about making logos, I'm sure it's the same as anything else. But do they allow you to have creative control, or is there a certain image that a lot of them have in their heads that you have to go by?
A lot of times, most of them just have a generic. They want this and this incorporated. They want a generic, and then they just kind of let me put out a couple of different options. I'll send it to them, and then we'll just go back and forth until we make the design that they love. The hard part is every now and then when you're doing different stuff, you'll have a client that reaches out that you're actually were a fan of prior to ever doing work with them. So then you have to put that mark side to the side and be like, okay, yes, I'm a fan, but I have to treat this like a business first. And then, but at the same time, you're sitting there like, theoretically, I want to do this 100% for free because I like you, but I can't because I would never make money that way.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. There's times where, like when I was working, I worked for Starbucks, and when Bret the Hitman Hart came into my store after one of his shows, I'm just like, I was making his drink, and I'm just like, so the whole fangirl thing just I had to try very hard not to get nervous and all that, but yeah, it was quite interesting. Yeah. When you're a fan of someone that trying to be professional, sometimes it doesn't work. But
oh yeah, I told you before. I had actually before we went live, I chauffeured Bobby Eaton around for a little bit, and I've always been a fan of Jerry the King Lawler. Like, he's a great artist, and I've just always been a huge fan of him. So I was like, I want, this is a guy that I would like to meet. Bobby has known Jerry forever. Bobby's actual wife, rest her soul, just recently passed away, is Bill Dundee's daughter. And Bill Dundee and Jerry Lawler and all that stuff, they're all together and related and from the area. Well, Bobby, like in the middle, we're driving to a wrestling show because he's got a booking to do. And I'm talking to him about, he's telling me some of the road stories. He's told me stories about Ric Flair ripping off the car door of his rental car and not paying for it. And he's told me all sorts of different stories. I just mentioned, like Jared, that he had anything for Lawler because I've always been a fan. He just picks up the phone and calls Lawler and puts him on speakerphone and just talks to him right there. And I'm like, trying to drive, trying not to geek out in front of another legend in his own right. And then I got on the phone and I'm like, so I completely understand it. It gets a little difficult, especially when you get those ones that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
And then you have other ones that you meet that you're just like, you're nicer in your wrestling persona than you are in real life. So you get both sides of the coin there.
Yeah. When I was working the door of one show, Nash came up to me and he's like, he goes and shakes my hand. And again, like I'm short and I probably came up to his belly button. So it's like,
that man's
this is
tall.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's a rather tall individual.
But yeah, no, that was kind of cool. It's like he came up, shook my hand. He was very professional, and then he's like, "Oh, I got to be on stage soon." So he goes and takes off. I'm just like, I'm just standing there like, huh. I didn't really say much.
Oh yeah, I definitely understand that one.
But
Sorry, my
yeah,
dog
no.
wants attention.
Oh no, dogs were cute.
Mm.
How many?
Is it going to
You
be on
said you
camera?
had. You said you had 2 dogs or 3?
I have 4 dogs.
4 dogs. Oh wow.
This one's our dog, Dotson, and
Oh.
then we've got a Yorkie, and then 2 German Shepherd mixes, and then my little 4-year-old over here.
Aw. Nice full house.
Yeah, definitely. And Mama's gone at the moment, so trying to wrangle them all. It's kind of interesting sometimes.
Oh.
What, bub?
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a nerd. I've got the original. It's upside down on the camera, but the original 80s cartoon
that's
shell.
cool.
And then it's going to be hard to see, but I've got an homage to the original Knees movie cover on the other side.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've been
I'm
a huge Turtles fan.
Too. Yeah.
That's one of the main ones that I want to meet is Eastman and Laird. I haven't had a chance to.
Yeah. So, which one is your favorite turtle?
Mikey. I've always been partial to Mikey.
Yeah. I'm a Donatello fan. I will always. I've always gone towards the nerd of the group. Beast for X-Men.
The nerd intellectual one.
Yeah.
Yeah. My personality is more of a Mikey anyway. I'm definitely that crazy, outgoing, think first, ask questions later type individual. That's what got me in the military for 6 years, and then now I'm writing comics about a serial killing professional wrestler. So
So what's new with like what's new on the horizon for your comic? Is Heel Turn is there going to be another comic book coming out other than Heel Turn or?
So right now, this is number 1 of 7. So I've got 7 in plan. Script number 2 is basically finished. I'm rewriting different edits and stuff off of it. I have a origin story for a potential superhero written. I'm kind of searching for an artist for it because the artist I have now is a great artist, but he doesn't want to do superhero style stuff, which is perfectly fine. So I'm looking for another artist on that. And then a couple other projects I'm trying to start writing and trying to get out there to build a fan base. But Hill Turns my pride and joy. Definitely going to focus on that. Priority number 1. Vantage is, like I said, number 1 is 100% completed. Before we ever launched last week, it was ready to go. So as soon as we hit funding and it completes, we will be golden to be able to get it out to our fans. Digital rewards will go out immediately. Print rewards as soon as Kickstarter, as long as we get funded, Kickstarter releases the funds, it's going out. I don't know how well it'll show up. It's not going to show up very well at all, I don't think. It was just sent to me about 10 minutes ago. It's kind of difficult to see. But it's a sketch. He's fixing to ink it for a crossover for 2 Kickstarters for Heel Turn and Yule. It's called JOL, but it's called Yule. It's actually been 100% funded on Kickstarter, but we're going to do a crossover for anybody that backs both comics to be able to get a print of that. Rios is the one that is drawing it, and then we're going to send it to Joel to color it, and Joel's the artist on the other comic book. So
Okay.
those should be coming up this week, and then from there, yeah, sorry. Then
Don't
from there,
apologize.
I've got stretch goal ideas planned, but we have to hit our funding goal first. We're currently sitting at 30 backers with 677 US out of 2,000. We're at 35% and everything like that. Sorry.
No.
He's a mess. 4-year-olds that do what they want. But no, some of the stretch goal ideas that I have, if not, we're going to have them as merchandise in the future. Because of the independent wrestling side, I have a merchandise plan already out there. We're going to have things like custom turnbuckle, souvenir, little small turnbuckles. They won't be the ones that fit on the ring, but they're going to be turnbuckle pads that'll be customized. We do have trading cards on as rewards right now on Kickstarter. I've got wrestling buddies I'm looking at getting. So there's definitely a lot that I plan on doing on this. And the comic will still happen even if somehow we don't meet funding, even though we're on target to. We'll still release it. It's just going to make it a lot faster and a lot easier if we can get the funding for sure.
Yeah. So, people, if you're a wrestling fan and love luchadors, this is a comic book for you.
Yeah, and actually by the end of the weekend, we are putting we actually did it last week, and we only sent it out to people that are watching the live podcast of the launch and on day one, or to mailing list backers, but we're going to make it public probably tomorrow. There'll be a link on the Kickstarter where you can download a free 5-page preview of this comic. It'll be the first 5 pages of the comic. And in that first 5 pages, you see a kill, the story, and he gets close to his background on there. You see the anger right off the bat within the first 5 pages, outside of just a kill that you get to witness.
Okay. So I'm being told, I'm being paged by Brian and say he's telling me to ask you about NWA. Obviously, you're a fan.
I'm not only am I a fan, but I have a background of working with the National Wrestling Alliance.
Okay.
Prior to Billy Corgan purchasing it from Bruce Tharp, Billy Corgan's the one that currently owns it, of the Smashing Pumpkins. They are doing a phenomenal job. Tim Storm was actually his champion for a while. I've done work with Tim back when my time with him. But Bruce Tharp owned it with another group, and from about 2014 through 2016-ish, I was the unofficial director of media. I was the marketing and media guy for the National Wrestling Alliance. I ran the website. I ran most of the company graphics. I helped plan. I was on the planning committee for figuring out who we're putting in the NWA Hall of Fame for those years. I created the NWA Ringside magazine that we had 7 editions on. Some of the covers of those people were like Santana Garrett, who was NXT star on TV. Killer Elite Squad was featured on some, which Lance Hoyt is now part of AEW, and his partner was Davey Boy Smith Jr. We had Jushin Liger on the cover. We had Rob Conway when he was champion on the cover. So I've done a lot of these guys that have either been famous prior to or are now. And I've had my hand behind the scenes quite a bit for that 2.5 year period that I worked with them.
Okay. Wow. And how was that experience being able to do like the magazine and all that for them?
It was fun. I actually got to meet legends that I never thought, whether meet them or talk, interview them, people that I never thought I would have a chance to realistically. Like we were doing the magazines, I was able to I had a nice conversation with J.J. Dillon. We were doing an interview for the magazine, and I had a nice conversation with him. I got to in just a minute, okay? And then I got a chance to have it was a supposed to be a 30-minute interview, wound up going 2 hours. I was on the phone talking with Dan Severn. We talked about everything from his wrestling and NWA career to where he got started, his UFC career, how all that crossover happened, things that we didn't necessarily include in the magazine, but I got to get a lot of eye-opening behind-the-scenes stories and things of that nature. And then as for the magazine, I actually partnered. We had originally, right off the bat, I had my um, editor-in-chief was a journalist by the name of Colby Primo out of Houston. And he helped me out for a while. When he decided to leave the National Wrestling Alliance and stuff, my editor-in-chief became Dan Murphy. Dan Murphy was a writer for us and actually is a writer for PWI Magazine. He was actually one of our behind-the-scenes influencers and our go-to guys of knowledge when it comes to magazines. He had worked for PWI for years, and then I brought him in to help with our magazine to get it out there. We did decent. We had got it in some local stores. We had sold it on MagCloud is how we launched it originally. It was a print-on-demand service. But at the time when you're going from a limited funds, but you're trying to get it out to as many people, the print-on-demand option, as you know with comics, is very worth it.
Sorry. Sinuses.
Oh, you're fine.
So what happened to the magazine? Like, is it still running now, or?
No, not too long before I left, we did the 7th magazine with Santana on the cover. It was doing good. We were looking at doing another one because we released it every other month, basically. We were getting ready to do another one. I think so on my computer somewhere I have the stories for that one. But then talk started to fail between myself and Bruce. Bruce was looking at potentially selling it prior to. He was also focused on some New Japan stuff and trying to grow the brand for sure. But I had some stuff going on in my personal life, plus some other issues that were going on. And I decided to step away completely. And then he still held on to it for like another year or two, and then wound up actually selling it to Billy Corgan. I had left before that had happened. I knew he was talking to him, but those negotiations actually went a lot longer than the news sites pointed out. The news sites made it seem like it went, fast. When the final decision was made, it went quick, but I remember him actually starting to reach out and trying to get it sold there for a little bit, which actually I'm glad it did because it was a dying brand. Bruce helped try to revive it. The only problem and reason I think it was failing at the time was the territory system doesn't necessarily work in today's professional wrestling. It was good to have the affiliates and it got a lot of exposure, but unless you have a lot of input behind that style, doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah.
So like Billy Corgan, he has turned it into more of a individual brand. It's not a bunch of affiliates working under it. It's an individual brand like a WWE, AEW, Impact, so on and so forth. So that's why, and he's focused on growing that and has changed it's the same company, same belt. He's just changed the premise because you have to adapt in order to make it work in today's world.
Yeah, exactly. And what are your thoughts on the industry right now? How do you feel about how it?
I actually enjoy it. I think wrestling is definitely in a resurgence. It had gone away for a while. It is starting to come back. You now have. WWE has been there forever, and they're the top of the chain. I'm not a huge fan of what's going on currently with them, but at the same time, they have gone a lot more business-oriented versus professional wrestling-oriented, in my opinion. So they still have a lot of talent, and obviously with the boys, for sure, you're going to make money. So obviously, I would do, if I was in their shoes, I'd do the same thing. AEW definitely has potential. They have them financial backing, but just like anything, they're still a new company, so there's still things that everybody have. And you'll have your critics on both sides. You'll like one or the other. Me personally, you can actually sit there between streaming services and national TV. You can actually watch professional wrestling every day of the week. You've got Monday Night Raw, you've got Friday SmackDown, you got, Dynamite. It's usually on Wednesdays. You got NWA Power on Tuesdays on Fight and YouTube, and then I believe on Thursday you also got Impact on Tuesday change, and then Thursday there was another show. There's another company called Major League Wrestling that has started to come out. They actually just got a small national-wide deal. You got New Japan. I mean, you can pretty much watch it almost every day of the week, which, as a wrestling fan, is awesome because that means it's being seen.
Yeah. And oh my god, brain. Sorry. Okay.
Oh, you're
where
fine.
did it go? All right. Yeah, you answered all those questions already. Anyway, sorry. Just Brian was sending me some questions, and you had pretty much already touched on them. Your thoughts on New Japan? Would you go back?
I love
to
New Japan. Their style is completely different than. On New Japan, I love their style. It's completely different than what you see nowadays in professional wrestling, which is one of the things I enjoy. To answer your other question, would I go back? Yeah. There's some things I would definitely do different. If given the opportunity, I definitely would. There is a guy by the name of Brandon Overhoiser. He wrestled as the American Kickboxer 2 out of Ohio. Heartland Wrestling Association has been around forever. He actually from Les and all of those guys and wound up selling the brand before he moved because of his mom's health. But I actually starting an indie company on and off down in New Mexico. So I'm actually working with him on doing a little bit of stuff there. I've done a couple of local things for a little bit here and there, just not as big as I was into it. I still love doing it, but I haven't. Right now I've got the 4-year-old, as you could tell, and he takes up a lot of my time. So I don't have as much free time as I want. Plus now with the comic writing, I've got to pick and choose what I want to do in my free time. And honestly, I have more enjoyment out of the comics and stuff because what I enjoyed at the wrestling was people seeing my designs. Comics, I can get them in the stores. I can physically get them in people's hands. I can see the excitement. Conventions, I can go talk to them, still get my nerd feel, so to speak. As a kind of a different kind of people. And it's another avenue I've never really done. But to see the excitement in people's faces when they read it, or my goal is to have it out, and then when I start going to conventions, eventually have people come over and like, I loved your book, I loved when you had him do this, this, and this, or have people pitch ideas. It'd be cool if he did this. I've already had a couple of beta readers send that, hey, you could do this. My actual first victim in this one is my best friend. Like it's 100% his likeness, and his kids range from 6 to 12, and all of them love the fact that his dad is being brutally murdered.
Oh my god!
And they're wrestling fans too. So they've read it and they're like, and they realize that he is being murdered, and they're like, "Dad, you got killed brutally," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's what happens." And then he's like, well, I know not to make you mad because you've already figured out how to kill me. I was like, yeah, but you're safe now because now it's premeditation.
That seems like the common theme with a lot of my writer friends, where it's like don't piss off a writer, otherwise you become part of their book.
Exactly. Whether sometimes we have to change the name to protect guilty. There,
Yeah.
you got to do certain things like that. Main character here actually isn't based off of anybody. I just had the idea, created it. They always tell you to find a voice. My voice for him would be if it was a movie, I would think somebody like a old school Mickey Rourke, like when he was first coming out, that young, that style of voice, but a whole different look, obviously.
Do you get asked that
But
quite frequently from
I
your
studied
friends,
a lot
though?
of Mickey Rourke's talking from he was first coming out in these. What was that?
Do you get the question from your friends quite frequently of wanting them in your books and wanting them to be a character?
Not often. I've had a few people here and there. I'm actually on my Kickstarter, the top 2 rewards. There is a reward where you can actually be the victim in the second book. You can actually,
Oh,
it's a little higher
fantastic.
and you get a bunch of stuff with it. But one of the main things is your 100% your name, your likeness, everything. You get to be the victim. One of the other ones is the second book introduces an event that is trying to connect all the dots, and he will eventually connect the dots, but you have to see if he gets caught or not. But the agent in the second book will be seen the highest level be that agent. Your likeness, your name, everything can be. It doesn't have to necessarily be you. It can be somebody. However, I do have to have consent from that person to use them. But you can definitely have a friend be put in there and brutal as long as they sign off on it. But yeah, I've got those rewards coming for that. And then some of the lower levels actually have where you can be drawn into the variant covers. So I actually have the standard cover and then a variant cover, which is Ethan's hand holding the meat tenderizer over top of a ring, and you got the crowd out there. One of the boards you could actually choose from in there, have your likeness drawn into that crowd. I've actually gave on the pre-launch, we did some contests, and I had 2 fans already drawn in that crowd. A guy by the name of Pops Van Zant from Comic Madness.
Yeah.
The Madness Comics. I actually drew him in. It's not seen on this one yet. I have to upload the new version. But this is kind of pre-colored, so to speak. It's not 100% done because we've got to fill in the crowd with different people. We're going to wait till it's done. But we went ahead and colored a lot of it, so it makes it easier once we get those people drawn in.
Yeah.
But that's a variant. That's going to be a Kickstarter exclusive. The only way you can get that cover is through Kickstarter. Now, on my updates, I put a... Here, take them off, and you got to put them like this, okay? There you go. But this is a Kickstarter exclusive variant. Under the updates, there is a sketch cover variant that is going to be public, and then the normal cover itself.
Oh, that's cool. Definitely worth a shot to look into. I mean, like, not very often do artists or comic book creators say, "Hey, be in my book," and it being one of the Kickstarter things. It's starting to be a little bit more common now, but it's definitely something that it's still fairly new, which is awesome. I like that idea.
Yeah, and one of the ideas that I had was a friend of mine writes novels, and it's the Tattoo series, and he actually recently, for his second book, did an eBay auction to be a victim in his book and stuff like that. Well, that's where I kind of the idea to do some of this. Like, they do it all the time in normal novels for independents, but you don't see it a whole lot in comics just because of the sheer extra time it takes. Want to get fans involved and let them see themselves. You don't always get to see yourself in, on a shelf, for instance.
Yeah. I love the art. Like the art is fantastic. The fact that you actually have uh, the same kind of art on the cover as well as inside the book is fantastic.
Yeah, all my covers are actually drawn by the same artist that drew the actual book. All the colors are done, with the exception of the variant cover. All the colors are done by a company called Bees Studio. They're actually the same people that did the Killaroo series comics. Are the same ones that colored that.
Okay.
But my variant color is actually variant cover is colored by Jeremy Kahn, who does a lot of stuff for Silverline.
Mm-hmm. Very well done. All right, so Brian's curious as to what what the best wrestling theme song was.
The one that gets stuck in my head so much would be the NWO theme. You know, everybody, wrestling and non-wrestling fans, knew that theme song no matter what. Hendrix guitar lick and then the NWO theme with it. Just
Yeah.
Now, personally, my best theme of all time would probably be I've got to put batteries in it when we're done. I'll put batteries in it. I'm trying to think which one would be the best. I personally like Shawn Michaels' "Sexy Boy" theme song as one of the ones like that. Today's Ty Styles theme is the best one that I think they have right now. But there's all sorts of themes. I liked all of the WWE soundtracks and rock them all out there. I still actually have a Pandora channel or playlist of nothing but wrestling theme songs. So the cool thing about the theme song is you should be able to hear that. If you're a fan, you hear that and you know who that wrestler is just by hearing the first few licks.
Yeah. All right, so you walk into a coffee shop and you can have any song, any theme song playing right when you enter the door. What would it be?
My own personal theme song. Now, if it was a professional wrestling theme song I had to choose, it'd definitely be The Undertaker's, just because I love The Undertaker that much. If I had my own theme song, I've actually done this before. I've actually come out on an independent show with this theme before. It was YMCA, just because that's my demeanor and what I do. And I act silly and do what I want to do. I'm not exactly the most physically fit individual, so that plays into the character as well. But I've actually done that on an independent show. I've actually come out, and it's deep inside the YouTube world, but I have found it once or twice, but it's very difficult to find.
Oh, that's
and I keep it hidden there for a reason.
I'm sure eventually someone's gonna dug it up.
Yeah, the few friends of mine that I work with, when they found out, they're the ones that found it, and they definitely found it and come back, and they had it playing on the work computer when I walked in the shop one day.
I made a commercial with a group of friends several years ago, and they rented. I don't know how they managed to do this, but they rented an actual transit bus, and we all got on there and did our little dance routines and stuff like that. So every so often, one of my friends will find the video and be like, "Is that you?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Oh yeah. Well, this entrance that I did, I actually had the full-on feather boa, the biker shorts, and everything to the YMCA theme.
Oh, that's fantastic. That is awesome. Hey, like you went and did that, so that I'm very proud of you for doing that.
It's all for the sake of entertainment. There's things that there's all sorts of stuff I've done to entertain people in the world. There's a reason I got the nickname in school as the Crazy Redneck. So that's just my mentality and stuff like that. And now that I'm able to put it in writing and make other people do it and try to keep it out there and just get it drawn, I get weird questions sometimes from my artist because some of the stuff I have characters do, some of the characters he's like, why? And I'm like, why not? You don't see it all the time. And that was something with this comic I tried to make sure I do is obviously comics ideas are a lot of times you see the same idea all the time. Well, it's just differently written, a little bit differently. I wanted something that was unique, that if you've seen it before, you haven't seen it like this and you haven't seen it in a long time. I'm not saying it's 100% different, unique idea, but at the same time, there's not a lot of wrestling comics to begin with. And then you mix the two genres of horror and wrestling. The fans are usually pretty close to the same. And then you add the art into it, and it just makes it that much more appealing, in my opinion.
Yeah. So Brian is curious, if you were booking CM Punk's return, how and what company would work best for him?
As a fan of Punk, I would rather see him come to AEW, just because of the sheer types of matches and storyline purposes they could have. For CM Punk as an individual, if he wanted the money, WWE's where to go. He would definitely get the money he wants to come back over there. Fans would love him. I personally think they would use him the way he would want, knowing the type of person that he is. And I think AEW would be the better fit. However, I personally, even though I know he's teased it here and there, I don't think he's going to wrestling. I think he's going to stay retired. I think he has more enjoyment out of teasing all the fans and just letting people let their minds race. He has a whole lot more fun like that. If it were to be come back, it's going to be kind of a one-off, not any kind of serious type thing, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I don't think it will be.
Have you been watching that show on A&E now, the Most Wanted Treasures from WWE?
Yes, I love that show.
Oh, it's fantastic. What is the one thing, like, if you were, being a wrestling collector, what is the one thing that you would love to have in your collection?
I'd have to say there is two things that I can think of off the top of my head that I would love to have. And that would be one of Jerry Lawler's crowns and one of Undertaker's hats. And I'm not even particular if it's a 2020 hat or if it's a 1990s hat. I don't care. Just to have one of the hats that he wore would be awesome. But the type of character that The Undertaker was and the type of person that Mark Calloway was as a person, he grew up the old school way of keeping kayfabe. So as you saw in that show, he has 90% of his own gear. A lot of his stuff, until he decides to get rid of it, you're not going to get hold of it. And that's another reason I want it, because it is so rare to get hold of something like that.
Yeah. And the fact that, there's like the Mankind sock and they're talking about like the original and and all the little ones that he just created just off the like that is incredible. Just like how many actual socks are out there. And the fact that he knows which one is actually the original.
Oh yeah, and like one thing they don't actually talk about, like for instance, Jerry Lawler, being a fan of him, I know they they worked on getting some of the Andy Kaufman stuff and things like that with him. I know it's not necessarily for that style, but another thing that I would love, especially being a comic fan, an art fan, I would love to get one of his original pieces. He has lots of original art that he does. He's a great artist. For those people that don't know, he is a phenomenal artist. So if you could get an original piece or something that he's drawn, would just be awesome. Because a lot of times, you know, even the little doodles, because I don't know what he ever did with them, but his notes when he was commentating, every one of those have doodles what he was doing at the table. He hardly ever read them. Jr. kept him going, and he just doodled all over his notes. That's just the style he did because he's a great artist, and that's something I would definitely want as a collector as well. And that would satisfy both urges.
All right. Brian is asking, what would your fantasy booking dream match be? Sting versus Undertaker, or okay, yeah. I guess that would be quite the show. Would be Sting versus Undertaker. But who would you love to see in a match?
Back in their prime, for sure, the Undertaker and Sting. Nowadays, no offense to the guys, I don't think it would live up to the hype of it nowadays. But if you would have got it, especially right there around the time WCW was purchased, around that, or even a couple of years after, around that time period, that would have been a great match. Everybody would have loved, especially if you let them tell the stories that both of them can. A dream match of all time. That one's right up there. I would have loved to see a Brian Pillman versus, you know, a guy like AJ Styles today. But that's kind of mixed in, obviously, generations and stuff for sure. But that's a good thing about dream matches. Now, today's thing, I would like to see realistically, I would like to see, and I know it's been done before, but I'd like to see it on mainstream. But they're on two different companies right now. I would like to see Rey Mysterio and Penta go at it again, but on a mainstream stage to tell a story, not just on independent shows. Now, I know they have wrestled before when Rey was gone for a little while off of TV, but at the same time, you can't find a lot of that. You can find bits and pieces, but do you put it on mainstream in front of that many fans? It does the wrestlers can put off a whole lot more because their feet versus, you know, a couple hundred or a couple thousand versus 20, 30,000. You know, the fans are definitely going to interact a whole lot. But that's just the lucha style in me wanting to see a match like that.
And, okay, how did you feel about Rey Mysterio being unmasked?
So when that happened, I was not a big fan because at the time, you know, I was definitely not an NWO fan. And the way that happened, I was with the way it happened. Looking back on it, I completely understand it and see it. They were going to do something different, but if you look at that time period, that's when WCW was going the wrong direction. We just didn't see it at that time, especially as a fan being in my late or mid. I didn't see it going that direction. I was not a fan of it. However, I didn't realize how young he was. He had that when he unmasked. He definitely had 100% of that baby face style. But I saw it the other day. I don't know. It was on Facebook somewhere. Somebody had shared a meme. If you pull up video where he was a picture where he was a filthy animal right after he was unmasking, and you put a picture of Dominic next to him, with the exception of the size difference, they're a spitting image of each other.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's okay. I kind of had the same kind of feeling when they decided to do the unmasking of Kane as well, and it just, to me, that's, I don't know, it took a lot of the mystery away from the characters, and I wish that they wouldn't have done that to their characters. but
Yeah, and if
apparently
they're going to do the
progressing
unmasking, I think
storylines.
the Kane unmasking went a lot better in my opinion story wise. They built it a lot better than the Rey Mysterio one. Honestly, Rey Mysterio unmasking, I think as a personal level, yes, I understand it was Kevin Nash and he was the big guy and Goliath, Dave versus Goliath type matchup and stuff like that. However, personally, if you're going to take a luchador's mask, I feel it should have been like a mask versus mask situation. Let another luchador take it. Like, for instance, when Juventud Guerrero was unmasked back in WCW. You do that style of wrestling and let the lucha style play into it because that's where the mask versus masks came from was lucha style. So let them pay homage to their heritage and get unmasked that way versus like no offense to Kevin Nash. And I understand it, realistically, Rey Mysterio beating Kevin Nash at that time didn't look like it would be possible. And they kept it that way. I think they abused it and were trying to kill the cruiserweights when they had him unmasked. And then they did all sorts of things and went downhill quickly.
Yeah. All right. One more question from Brian. Which modern wrestler would you pick to put in the Attitude Era?
In the Attitude Era, who from now that? Honestly, I think there's a couple different choices, and it depends on the period. As current, I think a current Randy Orton would have made good in the Attitude Era. Not the young Randy Orton, but the current Randy Orton would have been good in the Attitude Era. I think AJ Styles definitely could have. A current AJ Styles could have done really good in the Attitude Era. The one that I really would like to have seen is a current. Having a brain fart. Matt Riddle versus the Attitude Era RVD.
Yeah.
I definitely would have seen. I mean, I know RVD's still wrestling and stuff like that, but I would have rather seen a current Matt Riddle. His style. Matt Riddle has gotten a lot than when he started, obviously, and he's starting to progress more and stuff like that. And you put him against the Attitude Era, or not Attitude Era, because that was a little ruthless aggression with RVD. But you put him like that together, I could see that. The only other one from like an AEW perspective I would like to see over there might catch some crap for this a little bit, but I really would like to see Orange Cassidy in the Attitude Era because I think he could have done all sorts of stuff with his little nutshot gimmicks and stuff like that. Because someone like an Orange Cassidy versus Goldust would be freaking hilarious in my opinion. You have the old Attitude Era Goldust. Prefer Goldust pre-Tourette's, but I wasn't a big fan of that whole little shocking Goldust that he had. Electrocuted, but it is. Yeah. But I would like to see a Goldust versus Orange Cassidy. Now I know it's still possible. Dustin Rhodes is part of AEW, things like that. But we're talking Attitude Era for sure. I think Orange Cassidy could have done, especially his character, his unique character he has today. I think if it was done right in the Attitude Era, it would have been comedy than it is now. But definitely would have been cool.
Yeah. That would be an interesting. Adam Cole would have been amazing in the Attitude Era. That's what Brian is saying.
Yeah, Adam Cole could definitely. I think he would have been rated there. You also got Samoa Joe would have been pretty good in the Attitude Era. I think he would definitely have that monster style feel to him.
How about any of the female wrestlers? Would they fit with the Attitude Era at all? Current one?
The Attitude Era for females was completely, now granted that's when they started having some good wrestling for females, but at the same time, back then versus now, the Attitude Era, you had to have sex appeal on top of the ability to, but the ability to work wasn't necessarily as required as the sex appeal was for Attitude Era.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of today's characters I could definitely see over there. However, when I look at it that way, I'm like, there's a lot of them I think could have hang, but I don't know if they would have been the type of. I don't think they're the type of female that would have been wanting to do that kind of stuff. I would like to see like a Sasha Banks in that style of era and put up against some of those
That's
matches.
yeah, totally.
I mean, you have Lana that I think would be. You put Lana and Rusev in the Attitude Era and let them be them true selves, and that would have been perfect. Because their true self behind the scenes is definitely something that era would have been able to exploit all day long and let them do it. For instance, I don't know if you heard their tank foyer that they had at WrestleMania when they had the tank.
Not that I'm aware of.
So, Bro in AEW is married to it's Lana. It was the one who played Lana. They're really married and stuff like that. Well, I can't remember what year it was, but Rusev came out with the tank. Supposedly, and both Rusev and Lana have said this has happened. Supposedly, they had did what they needed to do inside that tank prior to the show. Together. So, I mean, you're going to talk about live sex scenes on with Edge and Lita. I mean, they put their own live sex scene inside of a tank days before recording. So you put them in Attitude Era and let them have sex appeal. I think they would have made a great power couple for that style of TV. No, they're both good. Miro is really good as a wrestler by himself, no problem. Lana, I don't know too much. I mean, I've seen her as a wrestler. I wasn't impressed personally. As a manager, great. You put her with her husband, it's even better because they have that natural chemistry. But you put them in that era where you got away with a lot more things on TV than you do today, and it would have been a lot. I think they would have gone a lot further in that era.
Do you think Trish Stratus would be the power wrestler as she was back in the Attitude Era if she was in today's world?
I think if she took the time, like she eventually did, if she took the time, like the later Trish Stratus, yes, I think she could definitely hang in today's world. I was really impressed when she came back and did the match with Charlotte. But if you start with original Trish Stratus, TNA Trish Stratus, no, she was a model. She wasn't even a wrestler. She was a model and did sex appeal modeling and things like fitness modeling. And I remember, I know this because I was a fan of Trish Stratus at the time. I was that teenage boy that had all the Trish Stratus pre-wrestling posters and stuff, magazine cutouts and everything on the wall. Her and Lita were my favorites. I don't think that one would, but they're towards the end of the Attitude Era when Trish was on top. If you bring that Trish Stratus in today's world, yeah, she could definitely hang. But you bring in, no offense to her, I don't think a Sable would have been able to hang in today's world.
Oh, okay.
I think Chyna was ahead of her time.
Yes.
Granted,
absolutely.
A lot of people say she looked like a man, but it is what it is. I think she was definitely ahead of her time. You had a Chyna where she was in her prime and put her in today's world with the ability that people are starting to loosen up. It's not on national TV. They're not doing it as much, but you're starting to do a lot more intergender matches nowadays. You let her come in this way. I definitely think she can she was able to hold her own back then with females and males. You put her in today's, I think she would shine today more than she did back then. I think she was kind of held back.
I think she would be more appreciated in today's world than she was back in late 90s, early 2000s.
I think she was kind of held back then. I don't know by who, but I think she was kind of held back and limited on what she was able to do due to the style, due to politics, due to whatever you want to blame. Today's world would be a lot more open, and I think she would strive a lot better if she was in today's world. What?
Yeah.
There you go. Sorry, I had a more ranger real quick.
That's okay. You have children, so
Go play. Go play.
Being a dad
Yeah,
comes
he's
first.
a mess. Yeah, I actually had when he has a WWE ring, and we bought him wrestlers and stuff like that. My mom found an old box of my old wrestlers. Like I had The Rock when he was in that tan suit. He had a character. I had Billy Gunn and Road Dogg. I have Ahmad Johnson. I have the purple Undertaker action figure. I had Farouk from the Nation of Domination action figures. All those that I gave him to use, and he's kind of made some dream matches of his own, old school wrestlers with new school wrestlers, on doing that. So I'm definitely trying to pass the wrestling tradition on to him, and he seems to like it quite a bit. As long as he don't do what I did in third grade. Third grade DX was still huge, and I wound up telling my teacher to suck it and got suspended from watching wrestling for a year from my mom. So there was a whole third grade year I missed wrestling.
I remember my school banning those T-shirts from the Attitude Era.
Told my third grade teacher to suck it and did the hand gestures and everything.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I was banned from watching wrestling for a year.
You know, it's funny how I don't remember my mom and my foster mom banning wrestling in the household, but it was like, you can't watch The Simpsons, you can't watch this, you can't watch that, and I was like, okay, I'll watch wrestling. And that was probably the worst, the worst of all the programming on television at that time.
Yeah. And I grew up, like my mom was a wrestling fan too, but she grew up with, she was a huge fan of JYD, Junkyard Dog. She grew up in that era. You had Junkyard Dog, you had Hogan, you had, wrestlers. That's who she grew up with. She loved JYD, and she loved the Midnight Express, and she liked those old, she remembered, the Rockers when they first came out, when Sean was still Sean and Marty Jannetty. She introduced me into wrestling, and that was, I don't remember a lot of it because I didn't watch it hardcore when she first started introducing me, but that was right before Attitude Era started. It was starting to transition into the Attitude Era. I was watching more WCW. WCW hadn't started winning anything. They had just left NWA, but they wanted to be their own. You still had a little bit of Surfer Sting, but we were always more of a WCW versus WWE. But then I remember the night that Austin became Stone Cold, that King of the Ring.
Yeah.
The promo for Austin's 316 just whooped ass. And to me, that kind of launched the whole era, and especially as a wrestling fan, in that watching all that, you start seeing that, and then just watching the transition. At the time, I didn't know the difference between the transition. I just started watching it more. It was appealing to me more, especially at that age group. Now I look back and I'm like, there was key moments that I witnessed live, like the final episode of Nitro. I watched it live when it happened. Out of the blue, had no idea why Vince McMahon was on freaking TV. I didn't pay attention to any of the news rumor sites, anything at that time. I didn't know anything about all those. They were there, but they weren't as popular as they are now because of dial-up internet and crappy internet and stuff where I lived. But at the same time, watching these things, you look back and you're like, I remember these parts of history, of wrestling history, and at the time, you don't know that you're watching history.
Yeah.
It is that, introducing my son now that he'll get some of that same experiences, because I don't think wrestling is going anywhere anytime soon. It may not always be the
No.
same companies, but it ain't going.
How do you feel
And
about?
now you can actually be a fan of wrestling and be open.
Yeah. How do you feel about Stephanie McMahon running wrestling?
On TV, it was a good role. On TV, it was a good role. Personally, if I had my way, what I honestly think should happen, like behind the scenes style. On TV, she's got that role. I think she could definitely take her dad's position on TV screen as that authority figure for sure. No questions asked. If I had my way, Vince McMahon would have already stepped away. He can still make all his money he was. I truly believe he should hand the reins to Triple H, to Paul. I don't necessarily see him doing that, but if you look when NXT started, not necessarily what it is now, it's still his thing. But when NXT started, Vince basically gave him the stuff and said, "Hey, you do what you want down there. You train my guys. I'll pull them up as need be. It's a developmental." Vince stayed out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Triple H created a strong independent company and had a great foundation. And then Vince started getting involved when all the money's coming in, your sponsors and your TV and things like that. It's still Triple H's baby. He still has primary control. But I think you give him WWE and you're going to start seeing a lot more changes needed. The other problem we're having now, in my opinion, for WWE is you put it on a big show like Fox, a big primetime TV company like Fox. You're going to have to produce results. You're going to have things that they want you to do no matter what. I don't fans necessarily want to see the same things that the execs do. But unfortunately, and this is where we're at, I think, a lot of times your execs are going to win out because they're the ones paying the bills. And then that makes the fans that aren't diehard WWE fans, it makes your fans really start getting a bad taste in their mouth, and they're going to start looking elsewhere. Fortunately, there's plenty of companies out there that we can look elsewhere and get our fix.
Yeah. And I really like the idea of continuing to help out the independent wrestling companies. They do such a great job at what they do, and one of my friends actually is a promoter with an independent wrestling group, and he's on the road right now. And I have, because of these individuals, like I met so many great people, and I think that we should continue to promote independent wrestling as much as possible. Because I mean, if it wasn't for independent wrestling, we wouldn't have the mainstream in wrestling.
Well, and that's one thing I think, like today, you look at the main stars that are out there. You have AJ Styles, you've got basically most of AEW, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Orange Cassidy, Penta. All these guys made their name on the independent circuit.
Yeah.
Made up, obviously, where they're making a lot bigger money, but the independent is where they started, and they built their reputation as an independent. Just like it's funny to me, when I'm looking at this, is you look at independent wrestling and you look at independent comics, and they are so similar on the process. You start here and you make a name for yourself where you start getting a following. So if you decide to go work for one of the big companies or a bigger company, your following's already there, but your name that's going to get you a bigger chance of getting hired to do it there. However, then you have the alternative there where your fans are on this style, but the big companies may need you to modify your style to fit their rules and regulations. So you turn off some of your fans on that. Give or take on both sides. But like you said, without independent wrestling, there would be nothing. I know I can't afford to take my child and pay $60, $70, $80, even $200, $300, depending on where they're at, to go see a WWE show that is completely different because it's filmed versus independent, where I can go pay 15 bucks, go take them to an independent show. Yeah, these guys may never be on WWE or national TV. Some of them might. You never know. But at the same
But the
time,
talent is
to me, an independent. Sometimes
there's
talent's better.
Yeah. The talent is there.
They may not necessarily have that charisma.
But I mean, they're a lot of their storylines. They're working. They're working on, and they're trying. And like the way that they talk, like there's one group that was called Primos, and that was the people that I was working with at the public access channel, and they try to do like the whole smack talk thing before the ring, before going down to the ring, and like, and all the like the catchy stuff that all the other wrestler troops do, and they did a fantastic job. I mean,
yeah, that's the thing with like indie wrestling is you get a lot of these guys that they're great wrestlers, but they may be missing certain things, and that's why they're not on the mainstream. This is where they're going to learn to develop them. Also, to me, I can find out more about the individual as a person, whether he's playing the gimmick or not, at an independent show, because I'm going to have a better chance interacting with this person. And especially for the kids, like my 4-year-old isn't going to know the difference between this guy he just watched in the ring and meeting him and talking to him to get a t-shirt versus somebody he sees on national TV. You know, he might ask me why don't I see this person, but he's not going to know the difference. To him, it's the same size, so to speak.
Yeah.
But they tend to put out more. They have more heart and they have more desire for the fans on the smaller shows than they do on the big ones. And that's not always the case, but a lot of it, just like comics, again, yeah, you still have your hardcore fans, but at the same time, you get somebody that's producing, a comic a month, 2 comics a month or whatever, writing for DC and Marvel and stuff like that. Just the sheer quantity, you lose the quality.
Yeah.
They may want to do this. Their side projects are probably phenomenal, but you start losing some quality because you have to put out the quantity. And that's where, like independent versus mainstream wrestling, you've got to give or take on that because of that.
And what also I like is meeting people outside of the ring and finding out that they're wrestlers, and then going to their shows and then finding out what kind of characters they are, because they don't give you a warning ahead of time. My friend Adam Knight, I met him at a convention. He's an author. And he's like, yeah, I'm a wrestler. Come to my show. And I'm like, okay. So I went and found out he was a heel. I'm just like, okay. So yeah, that was a shocker to me, and great experience though. And he definitely knows how to rile up a crowd and get them going.
Oh yeah, and that's to me, a heel is, they're needed, but they're the easiest thing to do. It's always easier to make somebody mad versus make somebody like you. But that's the cool thing is, like for instance, my comic, Ethan, he's a call center worker. He's got a headset on like this, and he answers the phone. And actually, he works as basically a medical bill collector. They're calling you because you have these outstanding. He's a collection agency call center rep, basically. And, he does this. But then on the weekend, he puts on a mask and is a professional wrestler. An extreme professional wrestler. He's beating himself up and stuff like that. They're completely opposite sides of the spectrum, but you see that a lot, especially in independents. You've got guys that are grocery baggers and around and, are some of the most loved people in the professional wrestling on the indie shows. One of the wrestlers that's actually going to be in the second comic book, it's going to be one of his opponents. Is a independent wrestler that I'm friends with. And the dude is a bouncer at bars in Kansas City, or was. I don't know if he still is. He was a bouncer in his normal job. And then on the weekends, he goes and does professional wrestling, trying to make it to the mainstream, which I think he's got the stuff that he can. It's just a matter of being at the right spot at the right time a lot of the times for that.
So sorry, I just noticed this now. Hey, John, good to see you. Yeah, no, I don't know. There's something about the independent wrestling that I will have more of an appreciation of rather than mainstream. But I don't know. I'm like, yeah, you said it earlier. Like you paying $60 to go to see WWE, or you can pay $15 and have like a more intimate experience with the wrestlers.
Which I find funny is just like I refer. It's kind of the same except for backwards on the pricing. Usually your mainstream guys, you can buy the comic a lot cheaper than you can from your indie guy. But at the same time, that the indie guy's got a whole lot more heart into the. Usually has a whole heart into his comic versus the mainstream guy who is just going through, a lack of a better term, a factory line to get the product out. I mean, granted, he might still love his product and stuff like that, but you go to a convention and you go talk to, say, like Kevin Eastman. Yes, he loves the Turtles and stuff like that, but he's done this for years. You'll talk to him. You'll have your set amount of time. You'll pay your astronomical price to get his autograph or his picture that he's drawn. Then you go down and talk to this other guy that may not have nobody in front of him, or very few, independent guy that you don't even know who it is. But you talk to him, you're going to hear the passion is so much more with this guy that even if I didn't necessarily going to buy it, his passion alone might get me to want to buy it just because he supports his book so much that I want to support him just because he does. And who knows? Buy it, you read it, you might fall in love and be one of his biggest fans.
Yeah, and I always tend to spend. I am sorry.
Cat fight. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of wrestling.
That's all right. My kid's making lots of noise over there, so.
I think it's my cat Simba being a jerk.
Oh, yeah, that happens.
And the other cats are putting him in his place.
Yep, that happens a lot.
So yeah, that's the life of at my house.
Well, mine, I'm promoting. I'm trying to write and have my kid and trying to play with him, give him as much time as possible. And then I also do competitive acting as well. So my free time's limited.
Oh, wow.
I write on my phone is how I wrote most. There's Ethan right there. My phone is how I wrote most of the first script before I formatted it or anything. Driving down the road or I install security systems and fire systems, things like that for a living. I would be driving down the road to a customer's house and just writing out the ideas or what I would, and then I have to come back and format it later.
Yeah. I'm sure like writers get the weirdest ideas in the most peculiar spots. I've written a couple stories myself, and nothing that I had gotten published just yet, but working on a steampunk story right now. And sometimes I'll be It'll be like 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll be like, oh, I should write this down before I forget.
Yeah, I was actually given, when I was writing my first novel, I was given a piece of advice by a writer. He's like, keep a notepad and a pen on your nightstand by your bed. He goes, and then keep one on you. He's like, you got your phone, you got the notepad there. He keep one near you at all times. He goes, because you never know when you're going to get an idea. And if you don't write it down then, you're not going to remember what that is by the time you get home.
Yep. What is
it's kind of like this one? It became, it was actually written down as an idea. I typed it up when I got home. I've got a work in progress note idea sheet on my Google Drive, and I just got it there, and I'm like going through, and it just sat there, and I think it sat there for 2.5, 3 years before I finally was like, oh, this would be kind of cool. And then I started developing, and I'm the type of writer that I write out, like right now I have my 7-book series. I know what's going to happen in each book, just the main general synopsis of what's going to happen in each book. And then when I get ready to write my book, I actually go down, okay, each page, this is going to happen on each page. And then I will go back and actually start doing the actual script for each page and panel. My artist hates me because even though I have it labeled as pan 2, 3, and I kind of follow the sequence or whatever, but he hates it because he'll sit there and go, okay, what kind of panel, how big do you want this? And I was like, honestly, I'm going to leave it up to you. So he has to, he's done it, not really. He doesn't do it because I'm the type of person, I don't necessarily give you every little detail that has to be in there. I was like, okay, this is the scene, this is the character, certain details that have to be there for the story. But other than that, you got the artistic freedom, which he likes. But at the same time, he's like, Joe, do you need me to make it this big? How much of the page? I was like, I only gave you 3 panels for the whole page. You make it as big, make each panel as big as you want. If you want one big one in the middle and 2 small ones overlapping, go ahead. I'm not going to be particular, because I was like, that's where you come in on helping me lay out the sequence and make sure everything flows according to your art. I've got the words and I want done. You bring it to life.
And when you're coming up with the storyline, do you actually write out like almost like novel form of what's happening with the story, or do you have like each panel in mind?
Oh, after I have my individual panel breakdown, I have each panel in mind. So I break down, like my page, what's going to happen on each page for that one particular story. So like this one, originally my script, before my artist got hold of it, after my editor and stuff, my script was only 22 pages. And then I would go in, okay, this page, this has to happen. Well, then I'll go down and I'll just start panel 1. And then I'll type out the scene, add some words in there. Then I'll go panel 2. And that's one thing that helped me, because I've read lots of books. Paul Kupenberg had a How to Write Comics book I read, and numerous other podcasts and all that. I've talked to several writers, and a lot of them, one of the things that they said was a lot of beginner writers have problems of trying to fit 2 different actions in one panel. Well, by doing it by per panel, to me, made it a lot easier, because when I was writing it, I would write the panel out, and then I'd go back and read it and be like, okay, that's actually 2 different actions. So I'll break that into a second panel. Wind up doing all that all the way through. Then on the next edit, reread, see. A lot of times what I tend to forget is sound effects. I have the words and I'll have that, but I'll forget certain sound effects to reread. And I'm like, oh, well, I kind of need this sound effects. I kind of need this in there to drive the story a little bit better. Or I have too much going on this one. I need to pull it back. But then I gave my script to my artist. He was drawing it, and there was a section there where he was designing, how he wants to do the. He goes, well, if I do it this way, he goes, you're only going to get, like 4 panels on this page, but we can tell the story so much better. I was like, okay. He's like, well, then we're just going to have. I was like, we can't just add 1 page because it's formatting. It's just not going to work like that. So we have. So we went through, and he actually just wound up just on the design. We didn't change the script. We didn't change the flow of anything. We just made certain panels bigger, and on the design side, wound up adding 2 extra pages just off of because of the art side only.
Yeah. I know Brian had another question here. If you can be picked up by Marvel, DC, Star Wars, who would you like to work for?
I'm more of I've always been more of a Marvel fan. My dream like comic to write for would be Deadpool. I love that series. I love the character. I've always loved Deadpool. Prior to Ryan Reynolds, I always loved the Deadpool character as a
Yeah.
comics. And then I think Ryan Reynolds just kind of blew it out of the water on the mentality that when you read the comic before the movie, you're like, okay. And then Ryan Reynolds kind of brought the character to life. He was definitely a good perfect cast for that story. Now, some of the movies don't necessarily jive with books, but he's the actor for Deadpool. There's certain people that they make the character that much more accurate to the comics, and he's definitely one. But I would love to, write a Deadpool, even if it's just like a one-off. I would love to do some sort of Deadpool stuff. My stepdad loves Batman, so that would always be cool. One of the mainstream characters. But as for a company, I've never been one to, I want to work this company or this company. There's just certain stories I want to do. I like Star Wars versus the Star Wars versus Star Trek. I'm a Star Wars fan, but realistically, I have no desire to write anything Star Wars because I don't think I could do that style that space and that kind of fiction. I don't think I can necessarily do it justice.
Yeah.
Now you give me some sort of horror or even like superheroes, like a Deadpool. I can mix my horror and my superheroes together, and I think I could put a decent one there. I've thought about doing like a fan writing on it, but I've got too many other ideas of stories in my head. I think I have a sheet that's already like 4 pages of just random stories, but it sits back there and just keeps collecting every day. And then as soon as this series gets close to being finished, I get into my script writing, then I'll start deciding what I want to do on my next one.
Have you ever been in the middle of writing your ideas down, like writing a story or something, and then like all of a sudden out of nowhere comes like a TV show with your idea or a movie with your idea? How did that make you feel about that?
So prior to ECW going live, I was doing eFeds. I'm typing up. I had a character that I called Taz, Tazz. This was before ECW had even. I mean, they were the little small time. They didn't even have TV shows. They were just local. This was before they made any kind of TV, before national. I lived in Texas. They were way up in Pennsylvania and stuff like that. I knew nothing from that area. I had this one, similar, maybe not the suplex machine, but it was a smaller character. Kind of because I was a Tasmanian Devil fan, kind of had the idea, being the smaller built stature. And then all of a sudden, ECW does this, and then they get a deal on, I think it was like TNN at the time. I don't remember who it is, but then it became Spike and all this other companies, but they got their first TV deal. I saw this character Taz come out, and I things like that. You're like, really? I've had things like that, but not too much of in the writing. I had some of my zombie book that I had written. My zombie book I had published, and then things that I did in that zombie novel, I wound up seeing about. And it's one of those that it was too soon. So they couldn't have read your book and then recorded the stuff. But, you see it on like Walking Dead, and I'm like, you start thinking like, did somebody just read this and make the story? But then with the way things are filmed that the time frame is not even possible for that to happen on a mainstream show like that. But you're like, just the coincidence, you start thinking, you're like, okay, somebody's trying to mess with me here. So yeah, I've had bits and pieces like that, but not full on it yet. That's why Hill Turn, I made sure, I got all my legal sides in a row because if something like that happens, I can at least get my piece of the pie from it.
Yeah, exactly. I know when I was a kid, trying to come up with like storylines for my own comic books and other stories. I remember working on a story of this I wanted a superhero spy, and I'm like, I came up with the name and everything, and then out of a couple of, as I'm like developing this character, up pops Max Steel. I'm just like, and the name was just even close to it. I'm just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I remember as a kid, I actually had a story that me and my cousin actually wrote on a piece of paper. It wasn't near as long as obviously anything normal, but for us, it seemed like it was forever because it was like 6 pages. And for us, that seemed like it was a whole novel right there. Well, we had the story of an idea with a dragon and stuff like that. Well, like literally, I think it was like a month or two after we had this idea, we wrote it out. It's been for us at I think at the time we were like 8 or 9. For us to handwrite out 6 pages of a story between the two of us was a feat in itself. And then we're doing that, and we show our mom and dad and stuff like that. And then Dragonheart came out in the theaters and stuff like that. The old movie Dragonheart. And it was basically, with the exception of, we had a different body part that was, used. But I mean, it was really weird. It was almost mirroring our little mini story. They obviously did it a whole lot better than we probably would have. But at the same time, we're just like, as kids, we're like, how is this even? Somebody stole our idea. And then, obviously parents are like, no, it takes months to film these things, sometimes years. There's no way that your little 6-page story did it. But yeah, I've had incidences like that. And it's almost like the deja vu. People call it deja vu and stuff. It's almost like something like that happens. You're like, is there really more than one, parallel universes here? You start getting into really things. You're like, all right, what's going on here?
You just swear like there's something
time
like
travel's real
down at you. Like I swear to God, like satellites will be aimed at me and just waiting for me to come up with something.
Yeah, I've seen that here and there, and I'm like, well, just let me have my piece of the pie and I'll be okay.
Yeah, that is always interesting how that happens though, and it's like, and then you're like, okay, well, I'll figure out something for this character later, and then it just kind of sits for a couple of years.
Well, that's one thing that we had to, when I worked in the NWA and behind the scenes, when we were doing stuff, we had to actually keep it hush because being a web designer, I know how to go in there and track data of who's visiting the website, where they're visiting from, this, that, or the other. When we were doing NWA Classics, Bruce Tharp actually had entered a contract with the Paul Bosch family to be able to convert a lot of these old they were old film reels. He had what? Not yet. She's not. But he had old film reels that they had to convert into a digital file, and then upconvert from their format to HD to make it look good. Well, we had all this stuff that we were doing. Like we actually had the true very first time Andre the Giant was ever body slammed, and it wasn't Hogan. We had that footage of Harley Race body slam and Andre the Giant outside the ring on the concrete, and things like that. Well, when you're doing things like that, you sit there and you watch these mainstream companies. You're like, nobody's going to know the NWA. We're not going to watch it. Well, we kept seeing the same IP address ping from Stamford, Connecticut. No, here, give me those. We had Stamford, Connecticut. The same IP address kept pinging. Every week we released new content, it would ping Well, we wound up doing a trace back and finding some, and it, I don't know who it was, but somebody at the WWE headquarters kept watching all this content every time we launched anything. So and that's one of the things as like a writer, I'm like, I got to keep everything hush until I've got my legal side, because you truly never know who's really watching nowadays, especially with how big the internet is, and all it takes, good or bad, all it takes is that one person to find it. You could have somebody good that launches your career. You have somebody that steals it or copies it. Okay. And then, but you never know nowadays, and just like stealing your ideas from there. Nowadays, you got to be careful because the internet, somebody sees it, they could steal it or pirate your stuff, or the good part, the right person can launch your career. So you never know, and the bad part,
as I've seen from my friends, like you need a good team that you fully trust, and
I've definitely seen different, and I try to stay out of the politics side. I know it's comics, and especially indie comics. I try to stay out of the politics, but there's a couple of people that I've kind of started talking to all the time, and I've talked to different people that were part of the same companies at one time or the same ventures, and it has fell apart. Still, they're each doing their own thing now, and I interact with both of them. When I'm interacting, I try to do my best of not to mention the other, because I don't want that. Good job. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. We can actually end here if you need to go to your do your parenting thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can do another 10 minutes or so to round it out right about 2 if you want. But I mean, here shortly I'm gonna have to for sure, because he's getting hungry. He's waiting on mom's bringing food, but he doesn't want to listen to that, so he's getting a cookie snap.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I have. I'll just play this little video and do a lot of the little promo things, and we'll close up.
All right, no problem. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
I'm Sage Ia.
I'm Thomas Carter Rochester.
Hey, I'm David Thompson.
Hi, I'm Kevin.
And I'm Mia.
Hi, I'm Mark.
Hey there, this is Dave Adams.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Rose.
Jerome Conner here.
Hey guys, it's Josh Bauer.
Willow Schuyler.
I'm Cosplay Michael.
I'm Brava.
It's your boy Country.
I'm Ryan Permison.
And I'd like to ask you guys,
please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please, please, please
subscribe.
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 Please subscribe to HWWS
Web TV.
Great bunch of people.
And don't forget to smash the bell.
Ring that bell.
Smash that bell.
Hit that bell.
Hit the bell to be notified.
Hit the bell to get notified of new shows
and videos.
You're going to want to do that, so do that soon. So we can cross that 20,000 mark.
And get us to 100,000 subscribers.
To 1 million, and 10 million, and 100 million.
On HWWS.
Web TV.
You'll really like it. I guarantee it.
Thank you.
That's right. We're gonna say our goodbyes. Will, where can we find you on social media?
So on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, we are all at Hill Turn Comic. You can also find our Kickstarter currently live at kickstarter.hillturncomic.com, or just search Hill Turn Comic on Kickstarter. You can message our Facebook page, and I will add you as a friend for my personal page. And other than that, hillturncomic.com's got pretty much everything we need. You can also do Linktree/HillTurnComic and get a link of everything at one site.
Excellent. Well, you guys can find me all over social media. I am the social media socialite. I usually have a little banner here that Again, I'm very bad at doing this. There we go. All right, you can find me at Hanging with Web Show, Web TV, all over social media. You can find me co-hosting here Saturday afternoons. Usually Brian and Nicole are with me. And you can find me on my own show, Will's Pillow Talk. It'll be just on random times. It really depends on my work schedule and the schedules of my guests as well. But yes, please tune in to Hanging with Web. We got lots of interesting things happening. Suncoast Comic Con is coming up in September, or Suncoast Fan Fest, I should say. Thank you for being our sponsor. If you guys are looking for tickets, you can still get them fairly cheap right now. You can also get 10% off if you use the code Hangin21. So yeah, thank you, Will, for joining me today. I apologize, Brenna and Nicole couldn't make it. But again, thanks for being part of our show.
No problem. I look forward to being a guest again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Keep us posted on how your Kickstarter is going.
Yeah, I will do. And again, even if y'all can't financially back it, share it out on all your social media sites. Let the world know we're here. I appreciate it. Any shares help.
I should also say that we're also part of the NSC Roadshow as well. So, all right. You guys have a great day.